Good morning guys, today's video is going to be the September garden and allotment tour, and I've got a interesting thing to show you guys at the allotment. I've been up to something behind the scenes, so I'll be sharing that with you. And also, just because it's September, there's a lot of harvest as well, but I really like this time of year because the garden is starting to transition from that sort of summer period into the sort of autumn and winter sort of vegetables and sort of what you're growing. So yeah, let's get into it. So we're going to start the tour here in the vegetable garden, and the first thing I want to show you is a little bit of a failure, and it's these tomatoes behind me. So these here are my tomatoes, and there's two differences. This is the tomato plant that I supported and paid some attention to. These are the tomatoes that I didn't pay attention to and didn't provide supports. Now, the variety is a variety called Marmonade, and it's a semi-determinate variety, meaning that it's somewhere between a bush type and a determinate or sort of cordon variety. Now, because of that, I wasn't sure if I had to support them, so I didn't support them. But the big difference I want to go through here is the health of the plant. So these plants are grown at exactly the same time, and I've got some fruit starting to ripen down here, which is brilliant. And the leaves are looking really good, healthy and lush. And it is a variety designed to be grown outdoors. However, this plant here that didn't have any support has contracted blight. And you can tell it's blight because you look at the stems and you've got all these horrible black splotches. And you might think, oh, look, you've got a lot of nice ripe tomatoes. But actually, they are covered in sort of, well, they're sort of rotting, basically. So they're not actually going to be edible. This sort of brown stuff here is yeah, because of blight. So unfortunately what it means is I'm going to have to pull these tomatoes out, but what that then means is I've got room to plant other stuff. So in terms of clearing plants, what I try to do is I try to leave as much sort of root in the ground as possible. The reason I'm trying to leave the roots in the ground is obviously to provide sort of nutrients for the soil. As the roots rot down, you know, it adds nutrients back into the soil. But really unfortunate here is as I'm cutting away, I'm feeling the sort of weight and size of these tomatoes, and it would have been great if they didn't contract the blight and if I had supported them like I had the variety over there, but that's just it. So while I'm clearing this, ready to plant the next thing, there's lots of talk about whether or not you compost sort of diseased growth, whether the compost will sort of, you know, basically add the disease into your compost and then cause a lot of problems. But what I sort of suppose with this is that if the compost gets hot enough, it will generally denature the virus, the bacteria, whatever it is, or the fungus in this case. And therefore I think I probably will compost this stuff, but I'm going to leave it composting for probably over a year. So any sort of bugs and bacteria and fungus and things will be pretty much sort of denatured by the time I come to use it. So one of the great things about this time of year is once you've cleared some space, you can actually keep on planting ready for sort of autumn and winter harvest. Now, in here, where these tomatoes just were, I've got a few different seedlings that are ready to plant out. So what I think I'm probably going to do is put some spinach where the tomatoes are. And I think as well as I've got a few sort of spring onions, which I can sort of interplant with the spinach, just to sort of get an extra harvest from the space, but also, you know, onions, alliums deter some pests. So you can sort of use these as a bit of a companion plant for some of your more sort of delicate crops. So while I'm sort of planting out the spinach and the spring onions, I thought I'd talk a little bit about the sweet corn here, and I'll do some close-up shots for you all. But the sweet corn here was planted, to be honest, a little bit late, and I wasn't 100% sure how good a harvest I was going to get, but they really have sort of accelerated in the sort of, not necessarily hot summer we've had, but at least kind of dry summer we've had, and they really have done quite well, to be honest. So I'm still quite hopeful that we will get a nice, you know, half decent harvest from these, but, you know, obviously got to keep our fingers crossed with this sweet corn, because pollination can be an issue. If you get sort of particularly wet weather, the pollen won't necessarily float down onto the tassels and pollinate the sweet corn, and you'll get kind of rubbish sort of cobs of corn. But fortunately for me, and we'll see in a minute, I've had really good success over at the allotment. So carrying on with the vegetable tour, this bed here I'm really happy with. So starting off with like the lettuces, I've got the beautiful red Lola Rosa lettuce, and I'm starting to pick leaves from it now to sort of cut and come again. I've got some cos lettuces here as well, which are doing really well. One of them's getting a bit pecked by birds, but I'm not too worried. I've got the rows of carrots for sort of hopefully winter harvesting, although I got them in quite late. Whether they're going to pull through, I'm not too sure. And then I cannot not talk about these, which is the super productive French beans. I mean, I am picking these weekly, and I am getting not only more than I can eat, more than I'm willing to freeze. I'm having to actually give some of these away because they are just such productive plants. And if you've never grown dwarf French beans before, I would 100% recommend it, but think about the number of plants you want. I reckon for a family of 4, maybe 4 plants will give you enough to not only eat some fresh, but also freeze some. I think any more than that is just getting a bit ridiculous. Now, moving on is the Brussels sprout plants, and it looks a really bad picture. They're getting absolutely ravaged by flea beetle, and they're getting hit by these caterpillars, but I've kind of got the caterpillars under control, I think, and the flea beetle, have its season. And I can see in the center, the plants are still putting on new growth. They're still trying to push their way up. So I'm reasonably confident that these will sort of maybe, as the weather cools down a bit, suddenly sort of expedite. Now, I did have a plan for this plant here, which is my coriander. My coriander was meant to go to seed. It was meant to flower. And looking inside, I can see that it is not doing that. Now, the idea with the coriander is it was going to flower, it was going to attract lots of sort of beneficial, sort of predatory insects that would sort of keep the flea beetle and the sort of hopefully cabbage white butterfly caterpillars at bay and protect the Brussels sprouts. But for whatever reason, the coriander has not gone to seed. So we're kind of having to do a lot of this by hand. Now, moving on from this bed here is kind of my winter bed, and I am absolutely loving this one, but I think the star of the show are these zinnias. They are absolutely flowering their heart out now, and they're amazing, amazing pop of colour. I really like this sort of, I suppose, peach coloured one, and in the morning the bees are on it, and it's just really nice. Quite big plants though, so they are crowding my parsnips a bit. But over here we've got the leeks. The leeks are doing okay. I mean, to be honest, I could start harvesting them now, but I'm sort of holding off until the potatoes are ready, because leek and potatoes is a good match. Now, down here is the parsnips, and these are really big plants. I don't know how big the root's going to be, but we will find out. And these are my Christmas potatoes, and you can see here there is a tiny little potato flower. Once basically with potatoes, especially these Christmas potatoes, which I planted in July, what I basically do is I wait till the plant dies back, and then basically it will be ready to harvest. So sort of, yeah, really, really nice little sort of way of getting potatoes this sort of time of the year. Now, the hoop house bed, as I affectionately call it, doesn't look like much, but this is going to be the bed that is going to kind of explode over the autumn and give great harvests in the winter. So over here, starting on the right hand side, I've got some turnip plants. They are getting really ravaged by flea beetle. You can see the leaves, and I can even see a flea beetle right there. Not much I can do about this. It's not necessarily going to kill the plant, but until that flea beetle sort of period is gone, it is going to stunt the plant, slow the plant down a bit, but there's not much I can do about that without resorting to chemicals. Now, these cabbages, and oh, that's a bit of a weed there. These cabbages here have been hit, although really small, a little bit by caterpillars, but I'm sort of hopeful that they will make a bit of a comeback. And yeah, when you look at the sort of center of the plant, you can sort of see some of the growth, new growth coming through. I've got another row of turnips, and then I've got the beautiful ruby chard, and these already have grown a lot since I put them here. They really have. They must have got their roots in the ground and are absolutely exploding. But I mean, I could start harvesting these now, but I really want to let them sort of establish a little bit more before I start picking the baby leaves for sort of salads and things. Some more cabbages, and then probably my favorite, I generally think it is my favorite vegetable to grow, is beetroot. And yeah, multi-sowing beetroot again, starting to sort of ramp up a little bit. But again, it's interesting because these leaves aren't being affected by flea beetle or caterpillar or anything. So it's one of those things, and I think if you have got problems with crops due to pests, don't necessarily lose heart. Something will probably succeed. And then over here, I have been harvesting these. I've got the sort of last of my carrots, and yeah, really, really good. These ones will probably see me through into the sort of early autumn, depending on what we're sort of cooking and things. But again, fortunately, I've got that sort of late crop of carrots that I've sowed over by the lettuces, which will give me carrots in the winter. So we're here at the allotment now, and I've got something to show you guys. I've been quite a busy boy here at the allotment. And just for those of you that are new, I took over this allotment in February this year, and it was basically just a pasture. There wasn't anything here worth saving. There wasn't even a spare compost bin or raised bed. It was pretty much just barren pasture, a very weedy pasture. And this year I have really kind of hopefully transformed it for the better. So ignoring the pumpkins for a minute, this is what I have done. I've opened up this whole area, which previously was sort of inaccessible to me. It was all sort of bindweed and brambles and things, but I have left obviously some things. I'm just going to take you through that now. So obviously here, really nice apple tree. Still got a little bit of clearing underneath to do, and I'm really looking forward to sort of giving this a winter prune, which I don't think it's had in the last like 3 years. So we'll get that into a bit better shape and things. Round through here, I saved this, which is a gooseberry bush as far as I can tell, based on the leaves and the sort of spiky stems. Problem is going to be is that there's lots of weeds growing at the base sort of mixed in with it, so it's going to be quite a hard plant to sort of keep going. This here, which I've propped up with a decking board I found, is the plum tree, and I think it's like a wild plum tree. There is also a pear tree, but unfortunately with a pear tree, on closer inspection, it's not actually on my plot. So my plot is where these sort of builder's fence footings are, and you can see the trunk of the pear tree is actually not on my allotment plot. So the pear tree isn't mine. I mean, you know, might take the odd pear, but yeah, I've got to pretty much leave that one alone. And then over here I have got another apple tree. Again, needs that prune. It's really sort of, I don't know, a little bit diseased. Some of the apples have got this kind of spot on them, which I'm not sure if what that is. It might be some kind of apple scab or something like that. But yeah. So as you can see, by opening up all this space, I've now got a lot more room to potentially play with next season. So one thing I'm probably going to do is put in another compost bay. I'm also maybe going to expand and put another vegetable bed here. And yeah, I can sort of see what else I can do with this space. So yeah, really happy with this. It was a lot of work, and I was going to put it off until the autumn winter time, when obviously the growth would have died back, making the work a bit easier. But obviously that's not the best approach when it comes to wildlife, which will probably be sort of hibernating or nesting in this area to sort of shelter from the winter. So I've done it now, it's all done. All I've got to do now is sort of keep going over it with the lawnmower until the grass sort of reestablishes. And then yeah, I've kind of gained probably another third to my plot. Now very quickly, something I do want to show you here, and it's something to maybe be mindful of, and I'm going to do a video on this particular topic, but these potato plants here in front of me are the exact same potato plants you saw over in my garden. Big difference is, not only are these plants a lot smaller, they've also started flowering earlier, which is indicating that maybe they're searching more for nutrients and things, and therefore getting ready to sort of set seed and stuff. But the big thing for me here is that there is a big difference between growing in, say, a raised bed full of compost and growing in sort of maybe just growing in the ground in a vegetable bed. And I want to sort of do a video on what the big differences are, and yeah, that'll be coming out soon. But the potatoes here are looking okay, and what's also looking okay is these leeks here. I was a bit worried about them. They were all really small and spindly, and I pretty much worried I wasn't going to get harvest. But I think what I am going to get here is lots of small leeks, which is perfect for exactly what I want to be using them for. Obviously, as you notice, most of the plot is taken over by pumpkins, and that was intentional while I used the black plastic to get on top of the weeds that are in this soil. So I've got a lot of bindweed here on the allotment, and having the black plastic with holes cut into and then growing pumpkins really has proved really worthwhile, because although while I'm waiting for that sort of soil to get sort of sterile and free of weeds, I'm actually still getting a harvest, and to be honest, a lot of harvest. There are pumpkins everywhere. The variety is Burgess Buttercup, and I got that from Real Seed, and yeah, absolute loving them. And to be honest, looking at some of the stalks, they're getting maybe near ready to harvest, which is perfect. But I am going to sort of wait. And if you're growing pumpkins and you're looking at the leaves and they're looking like mine are, that's nothing really to worry about. That's just basically what happens. And pretty much it's this stuff here, powdery mildew, which affects the squash plant and reduces photosynthesizing. But at that stage, your pumpkins are probably okay. You can sort of slow down the spread of it by picking off the leaves as early as you see it, but eventually it does sort of take hold, and that is what sort of ends the pumpkin plant. Now, as you can see here, the sweet corn here at the allotment is a lot more mature, and well over 6 feet tall. But that's really because I sort of actually planted it at, I think, the right time. The stuff back home isn't quite the right time. Now, something I just want to show you here is sort of nature doing that balancing thing. So you see the ladybirds here, and then you'll also see another ladybird on top. That's because there's lots of aphids growing on the sweet corn. It's not impacting on the harvest. The actual corn and the cobs and everything are really nice. I've already eaten quite a few. I would pick one now, but the best thing with sweet corn is to pick it and then almost boil it as soon as you can so that you get that real nice sort of sweetness. But I really like growing sweet corn because it gives that sort of verticality to the garden, which pretty much everything else is flat ground level, whereas the sweet corn here gives a real nice structural element to the plot. So definitely something I'm going to be growing more of. And the variety I've grown both here and back at the vegetable garden is Tyson. And yeah, I really can't fault it. Really big cobs, really sweet, and easy to grow. So that there, guys, is the September garden and allotment tour. Now, I've got loads of videos in the pipework. One I mentioned was obviously the difference between raised vegetable beds and growing in the ground, pros and cons, and what my experiences are having done both. But I've also got things like growing pumpkins from seed to harvest coming soon as well, and there's plenty more other videos I've got in the pipeline. So if you do like these sort of videos, do like and subscribe, and I'll see you all soon for more videos.